Pokes and prods continued to be thrown on both sides, as both the United States and Russia seem to be testing each other's will as it relates to their ability and their willingness to go to war or to remain peaceful and use diplomacy. According to reports on RT, President Vladimir Putin has stated that if the United States continues to try to bring the Baltic states into the fold of NATO, it's going to come to war. Meanwhile, you have President Joe Biden saying that he prefers diplomacy. Here's the thing, guys. This is all the reason we need. Never mind everybody else in the world who has nuclear weapons. We should all be cheering for nuclear proliferation. And the one who should be leading this charge is the United States. We should be the first country to dismantle all of our nuclear arsenal. Why do I say this? The United States was the first country to acquire and use nuclear weapons. It's only fitting that we should be the first one to dismantle our arsenal. Because after all, once we had the technology, we gave other countries around the world reason to want one of their own to defend against us in case we decided to use it on them. That's why that nuclear arms race began. Because we invented the atomic bomb. So when Oppenheimer was quoting the Hindu Bible, saying, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," I don't know if he knew how right he was. Because the United States, ever since then, has basically been seen on the world stage by many, and an increasingly number of countries in the last 20 or so years, as the biggest threat to world peace there is. Because we go around the world poking and prodding, toppling governments, hijacking resources, exploiting labor in other countries so our corporations can make more profit. Not the least of which here is, of course, the oil industry, which ties into the military-industrial complex. Hence why the United States is so hell-bent, seemingly, on going to war with another adversary. They've made movements towards China. They're making movements towards Russia. But China seems to hold more interest right now. But I'm only covering Russia in this segment here because Vladimir Putin has come out with aggressive talk towards the United States. Xi Jinping, on the other hand, has remained relatively low-key on that. Just saying he'll defend himself if he has to, that's an understandable stance. But the United States really needs to rethink its foreign policy here. We keep getting sold this story that the United States government and the United States people in turn should care about freedom, liberty, and democracy coming to the Baltic states. Now, it would be nice if they did, but here's the problem with that. The United States is hardly a beacon of freedom, liberty, or democracy. We in this country are hardly free at all. We have the boots on our necks constantly when we try to move in any direction that would favor our well-being. We're not liberated by any stretch of the imagination, as we're plagued by contracts that load us up with debt, which we have no choice but to accept because we have no alternative to the situation. And we certainly don't have democracy in this country at all. A dog and pony show in our government doesn't make a democracy. Voting in elections doesn't make a democracy, and I've said this before. They have elections in Russia, but they're sham elections. North Korea has elections, but they're sham elections, as Kim Jong-un wins 100% of the time, every time. And what's the similarity here, though, between specifically the United States and Russia? Because these two nations have a lot more in common than maybe either one would admit. Now, if you ask an average American or an average Russian, you might get a different answer. Most Americans and most Russians don't actually want to fight each other. They'd rather get along. They'd rather be like, yeah, what's up, Ivan? Hey, what's up, Bill? You know? Just kind of be buddies. They want to cooperate. They want to get along. They want to be friendly. They don't want war. It's only elements in the economy and in the government who seek more power that want to do this thing, which makes them the clear and present danger, not just to each other's country, but to everyone. If a nuclear war were to strike between these two nations, civilization is done. Russia and the United States have two of the world's largest breadbaskets. They feed a big portion of the world. It would be foolish on both sides to launch a nuclear attack of any kind, because not only would they hurt the enemies that they seek to hurt, but they would indirectly be affecting the countries around them who might otherwise be their allies. Because some of their allies do business with us, as some of our allies, like Germany, do business with Russia now. Now, Germany seems to be getting a lot of their oil from Russia, and that's really what's upset the U.S. industrial community, because they want Germany to get their oil from us. But listen, if you're in Germany, you are so close to Russia, it's hardly even a question as to which is more feasible for your people and your economy. It's Russia, right? Like the United States. A lot of people say that Saudi Arabia gives us the largest import of oil. It's actually not. It's Canada. Canada is the number one importer of oil to the United States. Now, the United States and Russia have a lot in common. The governments act overtly authoritarian while pretending to care about the people and democracy. Both governments seek imperial expansion and yet claim they care about freedom and democracy. Both have oligarchies in their countries. Both have an underclass of working people that gets screwed at every turn. Both have a military-industrial complex. The real question there I have is which complex has more say over their government. I would be willing to bet, and it's just speculation because I don't have all the facts yet, but it's speculation on my part now that it's likely the United States who's more susceptible to the suggestions of the military-industrial complex, which is why you see the United States so eager to invade other countries, so eager to launch a new war, because they want to make certain that those donors, those MIC donors, get the return on their investment. And Russia, like China, is just another boogeyman for them to drum up support for more war so that the public will turn patriotic, blindly patriotic, and not worry about the damage being caused by the greed of this devastating and destructive industrial complex. At the end of the day, these two countries should be mutually cooperating. They should be listening to one another. They should be learning from one another. Russians, by and large, value strength. The United States does as well. Although the Russian culture is slightly more misogynistic and sexist in many ways, the United States, for the people who are trying to seek power now, they're trying to move it back in that direction as well. But we are still more of the enlightened culture, that is, I believe anyways. And our actions, at least through our government, through our businesses, would suggest otherwise. When you get into the nuts and bolts of the average Americans, we actually are a little more enlightened. But I'm really kind of tooting my horn a bit on this and tooting the horn of the U.S. because while I have studied Russian, I do speak a little Russian, and I have learned about Russian culture, at least a little bit. I don't have the internalization necessary to make that assessment. But neither does most Americans anyway. The only American I can think of who would properly be able to assess what it's like living in Russia and therefore being a part of the Russian experience is Edward Snowden. And that would be the first question I'd ask him. What's it like living in Russia? And his experience, of course, would be purely anecdotal, based on past experiences compared to the new ones that he's been forced to endure in exile. Likewise, in Russia, if you were to ask a Russian what it's like living in America, you'll hear their story, but they could only speak for themselves. And again, that story would be anecdotal. It's funny how here in the United States, many people, average people, people in power, it doesn't matter, we've bought into the propaganda for so long about not just Russia, but every country on earth, really, that we throw terms around and we throw assessments around as if we're experts. And yet most Americans have never set foot outside of their own country. How could they possibly know what it's like to be a member of a country that they're criticizing when they've never lived there? This is why I don't listen to Americans when it comes to what it's like to be in a foreign country, what a foreign country really stands for, what the people are all about. Because most Americans don't really know, unless they've actually been living in another country. And even then, as I said before, their experience is purely anecdotal. We really need to start rethinking our foreign policy on this. We can't keep pushing the buttons of countries just because certain government officials, certain business interests want more power. Those people need help. They need psychiatric help. They don't need more power. They're willing to destroy a lot of what the world depends on for survival just for their own power. That's what's dangerous here, both in the US and Russia. Those governments need to take a serious look in their mirrors and realize that any movement towards war is bringing the entire world that much closer to Armageddon. And in the end, it's not worth it. It's better to cooperate. It's better to live in harmony. It's better to help each other address climate change and save humanity from extinction rather than the threat of nuclear war to just speed it along to satisfy one's own ego and their desire for more power.